and we are here live with the Refinery. I'm Leslie, and we are joined with Corey and Andy, Felicia, JD, Ryan, T, and anyone else in the world who's out there listening in world land. Today we have something new, and this is going to be our forever location where anybody who wants to find the Refinery can do so. There's a bit.ly short address for it, bit.ly/THE-refinery, all lowercase, and that'll take you to the Conservative Union website where we have a page called the Refinery, and that will always have the current latest live episode as well as a live chat room where we can chat with y'all, because last week it was just a little too confusing and discombobulated with the different avenues for people to chat and discuss. So now all of our during the meeting conversation will take place in this chat room on the website, and that'll actually always be there and always live, though not monitored. And like I said, we'll always have the most recent video, the live show, and then we'll leave it there for a few days until it's replaced with the waiting for next week's episode. There's also a link there that'll take you to the YouTube page where previous episodes exist, as well as links to the Party of Choice, Free Radical Network, and well, you'll already be on the Conservative Union website, so it would be kind of stupid for us to link to ourselves. Other than that, that's our new technical news for the day. Any other new technical news? No?
No.
No? Well, we can talk elections because this is another big primary day. I don't know how much I really want to talk about that. It does kind of lead to one of my big questions. It looks like in today's primary, we had the Mississippi runoff between Thad Cochran and Chris McDaniel. Chris McDaniel being the Tea Party non-establishment new guy. Thad Cochran being the old man who's probably senile. Oh, yeah, I'm saying he's senile. I was pretty much posting about how he needs to be retired because he's senile. But he's the establishment's establishment, and in order to win his runoff, he was really campaigning to get Democrats to cross over and vote for him in the runoff, which is really kind of dirty pool. But it looks like right now he's actually going to win, which is kind of sad.
How many have precincts? What percent?
This doesn't say how many precincts. Oh, yes, it does. It's between 50 and 60 is where they are. No, wait, that's not the number of precincts. Sorry. Oh, they have this stupid gray on gray font that I can't even read. 12.94% of precincts reporting.
Oh, wow.
So, and they are 3,000 votes apart. It's not done yet, so maybe Eeyore doesn't need to worry at this point. Maybe it's not all over. Who knows? I don't know. But that leads to a problem that I was seeing actually online today, and it's kind of as a result of Benghazi, Fast and Furious, immigration, and certainly the IRS hearings. We post about stuff, and a lot of the responses that I'm getting from our side is, so what, who cares, nothing's ever going to happen. Nobody ever gets fired, nothing ever changes, it's all for naught. How do we turn that around? Anyone? And the crowd goes silent. That's depressing.
I don't know what there is to turn around. I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. We kind of have to we have to deal with the realities as they are.
Well, I mean, how do we get the crowd, the people that we're talking to, our compadres online, to not be depressed and fatalistic about it? I mean, yeah, I'm a positive, optimistic cheerleader. Oh, come on, keep trying. It's what happens. It's the only way it really works. But legitimately, how do I not seem like a doofus for just always being so happy? I mean, how do I convince people? Yeah, I know it seems like nothing ever happens, and we can talk about this until we're blue in the face, but we lose elections, and the establishment always wins, and Boehner gets reelected, and Kevin McCarthy is the majority, and nothing ever changes. How do we convince people to not just give up and pout and be negative?
I always just tell them, look, guys, you got to look at things with a wider lens. And what I mean is, if you look at the Republican Party in the last 6 months or year, you'll see sniping both ways. You'll see nasty comments by, like Boehner or some people, and from the other side too. But if you look at it over the last 20 years, we are seeing a historically lightning fast transition of a party really into a Tea Party libertarian hybrid. And in that kind of a transition, especially happening that fast, you're going to have a lot of very loud resistance, and they're going to score a lot of wins early on. That's okay. And by the way, remember last week we were talking, some of those wins aren't bad because a lot of the Tea Party candidates, they weren't winning in any of the purple states.
Right.
Or purple districts. So it was actually, well, I'm Tea Party, and I'm go Tea Party, but I'm a realist, and so it was actually strategically better that some of our folks maybe didn't win in some of the purple states and so forth, but in some of the states that aren't so purple, yeah, maybe Thad Cochran will pull it off tonight. It's pretty early, by the way, but maybe he pulls that off tonight. But the movement is all in one direction. One side's going down, the other side's going up. There's no question of that. If you look over the last 20 years, there is absolutely no question of that. I mean, would somebody like Rand Paul be winning every single, and I'll be done here in a sec, but would he be winning almost every single straw poll?
Well, that's true.
10, 20 years ago? Are you kidding? He wouldn't get 5%. So I see a very fast transition, but because we're in the moment of it, it still seems frustrating. That's all.
Right. 2 years seems like an eternity, and a lost election seems like a reason to give up. And when you see the hearings that go on and nothing ever happens, and it gets very much of a what's the point? Because we're kind of used to, in the internet world, a year in private sector internet time is an eon. Companies are born, succeed, get rich, and die in a year. But in politics, a year is nothing. And that's really, I think that's hard. But I like what you're saying about point out that the trend line is in our favor.
Oh, strongly.
There's a huge learning curve we're still having to overcome as well. That's a big deal. And we can't expect to be political experts at the rate of which people who have been in power for years have developed skills and tricks and connections and whatever. I mean, we have to play a realistic game. We have to understand that just because one race doesn't work out or two races don't work out the way we'd like them to, that is not a signal of impending doom. It just might be that people were out campaigning. Campaigning is a skill, and it's a job, and it's a strategy network of things that have to go together and play well. And it's still very easy with the limited amount of experience that Tea Party people have, or reform people have. It's still a long way off from the kind of expertise you get after 20 years in the trenches. We have to be realistic.
Sometimes Thad Cochran is going to win. I mean, that's not something that we can always avoid. It's you're going to have cases where this guy. I heard on the news today on one of the channels that this is the first time that Thad Cochran has actually campaigned like he meant it since 1976.
Wow.
So
that's something. That's actually a victory, I think.
Yes, it is. It's making our candidates better. I mean, if Thad Cochran is bringing Democrats in to vote for him in the primary,
right? How sad is that?
No, 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 no. There's not a how sad is that. That's a good thing. I mean, that means some stuff. That means that he's getting across to Democrats in some way. If that means that it's just a vote against McDaniel's, then that's one thing. But it could be something else. It could be, maybe being involved with the McDaniel situation, with the Cochran situation going into this runoff election. Maybe it changes some minds. Maybe people reconsider things. Maybe that's a vote that becomes a Republican vote going forward. Who knows? We aren't sure about that.
That's true. A lot of what I've been hearing is that Haley Barbour and Thad Cochran, the case that they were making to Mississippians about vote for Thad is so that you can get more federal money. And Haley Barbour's argument against Chris McDaniel is that Chris McDaniel wants to cut the federal budget, which makes him a bad guy or something. Because Chris McDaniel wants to cut the amount of federal dollars that come for education. And Mississippi has been rated one of the most corrupt states in the nation. I think it was a Pew survey or there was a survey recently of the corrupt states, and it was quite interesting that the most corrupt states are the ones in the deep south that also get hammered for taking in a lot of federal dollars and having a lot of people on poverty, and that's what liberals use as their argument against the success of the red state model, because those are red states and they have really poor people and stuff. And the case is, it's not a red-blue thing, it's a corruption thing. But so I think that maybe
one would just need to ask how it measures up against Louisiana to prove or disprove that point, which is right next door.
Well, I guess that's true, because Louisiana has some of the same poverty issues, etc.
And a history of the same corruption issues.
That's true. That's true. Louisiana. Growing up, my mom always said, if you want to look at corrupt politics, that's Louisiana.
Yeah.
So the answer to our depressed compadres, to try to keep them in the game, is to remind them of the trend line. Boring.
It's not just that. It's not just reminding them of the trend line. It's also. I mean, this is one race. There are a bunch of others. We could talk about Monica Webby in Oregon, or we could talk about any of the other candidates that are running for Senate this year that they could be happy about. If you gotta frown a little bit because Thad Cochran made it back in, whatever. Lindsey Graham, yeah, it's gonna happen.
Right.
It's the same principle. It's I prefer personally McConnell to both of those guys, but there are other races out there, and they are going to be just as important as this one. So, and in the long run, this isn't a lost seat. This is still a Republican who's going to agree with us some percentage of the time. And it's not a low percentage of the time either. It's he might not be the most conservative senator ever, and he might be an old man, but better than a Democrat, right?
Very true.
I would kind of combine a little of what I and JD said. I mean, on the one hand, you look at the trajectory; it's going in one direction only overall, with losses on the way because you're not at the end yet. But also look at the impact you're having on these quote-unquote establishment guys who are now having to change their tune quite a bit just to retain their seats and keep their place. We are, number one, I think we're affecting both sides of the of conservatism pretty deeply, and I see a lot of good here. I really do.
Okay, I'm
agree
convinced.
with my mic off. But I definitely agree with what Andy just said. I mean, there's stuff that these elections have consequences, and so do the losses by Chris McDaniels or any of those guys. And again, it's not for sure that Pat is going to win this yet, but just because you have a person who loses, as can be evidenced, as is evidenced by the election in New Jersey, it doesn't mean that it's over for Chris McDaniels. It doesn't mean that this is the end of these guys. You know, there's still a lot more left to go. And yeah, is it going to be a little bit tough in you know, in that state, in that party to get everybody back together and vote Republican and deal with the fact that there was mud slung in both directions? Yeah, that's going to happen. It's not always as nice as everybody shakes hands and continues with the team effort as it was here in New Jersey, but you know, it's a reality that we have to deal with, and I think that we can deal with it.
Okay, I'm depressed or disappointed for another reason. Let's see if you guys can talk me off the ledge. I almost had to
This is
turn
a
off.
suicide intervention night.
I almost had to stay off my internet a few days ago. I commented on one of Pradeep's posts, just like, I can't take this anymore. I've got to turn everything off for a few days. This is driving me crazy because of all the scandals and like the people at the border and everyone, like the conditions that those children are in right now, and with the IRS, the more and more keeps coming out each day, and anyone looking for answers is getting stonewalled. They're lying, and no one's doing anything about it. And then you've got Iraq falling again, and just everything on every front is a complete disaster. Just like Obama used to teach, the Alinsky playbook, hit them from all angles and overwhelm the system. It's
Right.
working.
Well,
I
and
do see some Democrats kind of coming across the aisle, and some people are saying, look, this is ridiculous. There was a couple people on MSNBC the other day that said, you know, that we really need to be paying attention to this IRS thing. Like, this really is a problem. It's not just conservatives making it up, but it's such a disaster, and so many people are still asleep, and I just don't know what the country can do. Like, if you let this politician get away with this kind of stuff, the next one that gets in office is going to push even further and get worse. And if Obama's not that bad, maybe he doesn't do all the things people are scared he's going to do. The next guy will, and it's not going to end well.
and that's similar to in one of Cruz's posts about the IRS hearing this morning, where the archivist said that no, they did not follow the law, which I think is pretty clear, but we actually had the guy with the National Archives saying the law says if they're not going to be able to provide all of this documentation, they need to inform us. They did not inform us. They did not follow the law. But there was a comment from one of the members of the Conservative Union. Nobody pays the slightest bit of attention. It gets no coverage by the mainstream media, and the current administration continues on business as usual. And that, I think, is a lot of the feeling out there. It's like, how do we? Because we'll have all these hearings about the IRS, and we'll have the hearings about Benghazi and Trey Gowdy. The video of Trey Gowdy doing an excellent job with the questioning is really lighting up the airwaves. But the feeling is out there, no matter how good this stuff is, nobody in the administration they don't stop. Nothing changes.
One piece of good news, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Once again, a little wider vision than, I'm not saying to you guys, I'm saying to our audience, to the people who are really not seeing anything and just seeing, oh my gosh, everything just blows over. You know, it blows over, but it has an effect every time. Instead of looking at the last month, look at the last year and look at Obama's approval rating.
True.
What's happened in the last 1, 2, 3 years? It is now at its lowest on several issues. For the first time, he is now underwater significantly on his handling of Iraq. He was always well above 50% on that. I mean,
and I think wasn't his personal likability also underwater, and that's a stunning one.
Yeah, you see,
it's like he's not good at stuff, and I also don't like him.
We're seeing the untouchable president because he's got the big three, media, academia, and entertainment behind him.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the untouchable president who's being touched. I mean, we keep thinking, well, nothing's happening. Well, no, nothing's happening on Capitol Hill. They have the power. Okay, it's not going to happen when the other side has the power and the other side has no conscience. Okay, that's all there is to it. But when you see where the polls are going, unless they have a dramatic turnaround before November, the Democrats are about to lose a lot more power. I mean, it is looking awful to have your standard bearer having those kinds of numbers. It has had a dramatic impact over the last 6 months. These scandals have.
I agree with you on that, but I feel like our society is at a place where it's going to take a lot of prison time for all these people breaking all the laws and stonewalling and perjury and everything for people to get it. It's like, oh yeah, his ratings plummeted. Oh well, I'll do the same thing. I'll just make sure to not get caught. Or like, the corruption's not going to end. The targeting's not going to end. The lawlessness is not going to end unless there are real consequences and people go to prison. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I mean, politics, they'll just switch sides, or I don't know. Maybe I'm just being negative.
Well, keep in mind, Ryan, people going to prison doesn't affect you. People losing the Democrats losing the Senate affects you. For what it's worth.
Well,
I'm going to prison too because they deserve it, obviously. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I understand the feeling that if someone is doing something that is wrong, illegal, immoral, and improper in all kinds of ways, that they ought to pay for that, that there ought to be consequences to that. But there is a practical angle, and I think you hit it exactly, Andy, is that what is going to affect your life is the political change from things like electing a Republican Senate in 2014, things like electing a Republican president in 2016, if at all possible. These are the sorts of things that lead to power changes in the way that one can manage one's affairs a little better, or at least have some influence with the people managing the affairs. I could say that, hey, who knows, maybe there's going to be investigations after this administration. Maybe, maybe not. But the important thing is, can we start undoing some of the damage? Well, you cannot do that until you've got power. You absolutely can't. We don't have the big three. We don't have academia. We don't have education. We don't have entertainment. But what we should be able to do is, piece by piece, race by race, do our best to make sure we're doing pickup seats this fall, at wherever we can in the Senate, and that's job one. And then job two is 2016. All the rest of it is sort of moot and frustrating and just angry making until you get to the point of, okay, I'm angry enough to where I'm going to do something more than I've done before. I'm going to donate to a campaign to a candidate in another state who's got a chance at taking a Democrat seat. I'm going to spend some time call banking from my state for that state, for Oregon, for whatever, to make sure that there are opportunities and coverage where maybe these candidates have a smaller bank account, or less access to funds, or being able to take the door-to-door. I know a guy who went to Mississippi and has spent the last 2 weeks there working for Chris McDaniel just to make sure that he did his part, because he had the ability to take off the time and do that. That's a little frustrating if you look at the results that seem to be happening, of course. But what he's also doing is building the network and the habit of making sure we're not giving up. You miss one, you lose one, let's go on to the next one. Let's fight the next battle. Until we've picked up power, though, there isn't really any interest, on my part, for talking about impeachment, talking about consequences. Yes, people that do bad things ought to be punished. Are they? Quite often not. And that is the best argument to me for not making your government so big, making it smaller. And then how do you get a smaller government? You elect people who are more likely to shrink government or to stop, spending so much And yes, it's not perfect. The Republicans have a bad track record on a lot of those things. So let's make sure that we're doing the follow through. We can't just send them up there without a leash and a collar and a shock stick or whatever we'd like to do. We have to be the accountability partners for those guys. And that's what we've done too often, is we've just abdicated that part of the responsibility too.
Can I ask a question of everybody real quick here? Because I believe like you said, you got to get power. The clearest barometer of what's going to happen with power this November is Barack Obama's approval rating. It's it's his second term, midterm election. His approval rating is going to have the biggest impact on on the elections this November of anything. I got to be honest. Because I have all the frustration Ryan does too, and because of that, I've been very pleasantly surprised by the way his numbers have dropped, not just in this or that area, but across the board, in every single area. Am I the only one? Have you guys been surprised by this, or did you guys see this all coming?
I've been really surprised. I expected that his unshakable support was more unshakable than it has turned out to be. Frankly, I'm surprised people are paying enough attention to have a negative opinion of him.
When everything is on fire, it's kind of hard to not see the smoke. So he's been that bad. This administration has been that awful that it's been hard to cover up, hard to ignore. I do want to address this whole idea that Prue in the chat brought up, that this is going to turn into voter apathy if nobody gets perp walked.
I think that's a risk. I do think that's a risk.
I don't see it, because people will get perp walked, but it'll be in the next administration. I mean, it's just how it's got to happen. You can't have. Is Eric Holder going to do anything about anything?
No.
No. So that's strong motivation to get somebody new in, to elect a new president, and chances are that president is not going to be a Democrat. I mean, that's not. Is that what you're going to do? You're going to hire another Democrat to replace the Democrats that just screwed everything up? It's hard for me to fathom that.
I think there's something missing in this discussion, and that is the amount of importance that your average voter places on things like these scandals. I think we probably should explore the idea of whether scandal fatigue actually does lower one's desire to see bad guys punished, if it sort of cynicizes, I guess for lack of a better word, the electorate, and makes them have less faith in any politician, which is a good position if you're a Democrat. You want the electorate sort of demoralized, because then you pop up a candidate like Barack Obama who's going to change everything and fundamentally transform and blah, blah, blah. And that puts you in a good position for the election part of that. The governance part, not so much. But if you've established the pattern of needing a savior, needing a hero, and Thomas Sowell went into this deeply about the whole victimology thing and how Democrats need to be the saviors and the good guys, so they cast conservatives as the ones who are holding back their constituents. But if you're looking for the pattern of demoralized by government, elected Democrat, everything's great, oh, things start to go bad, demoralize the electorate, what's the next step? It's finding another savior, right? So that they would have people on that track time and again. If we get too bogged down in the scandal thing, we're playing into that pattern as well. That is sort of how Democrats have been able to paint Republicans as the party of no, or the conservatives as old and mean and crotchety. And there's so much of the electorate that wants to see government do things, and it's very hard to educate that out of people. But what you can do is show how when government does things, it does them poorly, and it does them and creates victims of real people who need our sympathy and with whom we can empathize and whose stories we can highlight and turn it around and say, look what you get when you get big government. You get this awful thing that happened to this person or that person. And it's sort of a counter to their savior mentality. At least that's the way I'm thinking of it now.
Yes, it makes it, this guy that got built up as this huge savior, as you said, um, is standing by, watching as we've got hundreds of veterans, thousands of veterans on lines, trying to get treatment from government health care. We can talk about the situation with Obamacare that nobody's happy with, that is still a failure. There's a lot of stuff that impacts the idea of having a single governmental savior come in, swoop in, and fix everything. So, I think that's a big bolster to our side of the discussion. I think that we aren't going to be putting up any saviors. That's not what we're doing. That's not our marketing plan going into these next elections. What we're trying to do is just return to competency, return to adults in the room instead of people who are widely lauded as being saviors and geniuses and all that stuff. We just need competence. We don't need a genius. We just need somebody who's going to fix things.
Well, and the polls are showing that the Democrats are losing ground on the competence scale as well, and that big government in general is seen as incompetent. And we're at historic lows on approval of Congress and historic lows on trust in the media. I think culturally and generationally, we're in a phase where there's no accountability for really anything. I mean, nobody went to prison over any of the stuff that happened in the first term. Nobody has been in trouble for any of the housing crisis or any of the stimulus frauds and all of that. Nothing has happened to anyone. There's just been a complete lack of accountability anywhere. I mean, does anybody remember Bernie Ebbers from WorldCom went to prison for stuff that these days would be a big shrug of the shoulders. Oh, well, too bad. Let's give him another $7 billion grant. Maybe he can do better next time with the next stimulus. We would give that guy more money now. And maybe there's a way to make the argument that the only way to return to accountability is to have Republicans in office, because then the media holds the Republicans accountable.
That is an interesting angle I had never thought of. Using them against themselves.
Right.
What's that phrase? Hoist on your own petard. There you go. Yeah. I don't know how that sells, but it's certainly a fascinating concept to think about.
Well, it's true. I mean, it's fascinating because, well, it's true. Look at all of the stuff that the media really held Bush accountable for, and they're still trying to say that the whole IRS scandal is no big deal. We know that if the IRS targeting scandal had been Republican bureaucrats attacking progressive groups, we know that would have been front page above the fold every day for months, starting 3 years ago. We know this. But because we have this massive bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy is Democrat, not all, but the vast majority of federal employees, the vast majority of bureaucrats, really at any level, are liberal Democrats. That's just who they are. Sometimes they end up working for Republican administrations, but they are still Democrats. Now we have a Democrat bureaucracy working for a Democrat thug executive branch, administration, with liberal Democrat progressives in the media reporting on them or covering up the stories. I mean, just today, the New York Times, on their front page, rather than anything about the IRS hearing from prime time of last night, and that was this morning, rather than anything about the IRS hearings, the New York Times and the Washington Post had stories that the biggest story that they wrote about was Chris Christie and some bridge thing.
At least they didn't show footage of him playing softball. I mean,
Right.
that's really troubling.
And it's not so much the stories they write, it's the stories they don't write. The IRS is not a story that they're covering. They're choosing not to cover it because it makes their guy look bad. And maybe our angle is elect Republicans because it's the Democrats that are not getting investigated. I don't know how to do that, but
What is it that plays?
Well, I don't think that'll play, but you know what? I think the way to do it is this. Let the investigations go on. They are working. His approval rating, he is the centerpiece of their party, and his approval rating is going down, down, down. And I think it's pretty much cratered. I don't think it can go any lower because you're pretty much down to hardcore Democrat support now.
Mm-hmm.
And he has lost people even in things like Iraq and so forth. So what we need to do is just, we've got a group. What's his name who's running this investigation in the IRS?
Well, Daryl Issa with the oversight group. And
a really good one.
Well, Trey Gowdy's doing Benghazi, isn't he?
Right. Just have Gowdy do his thing. Leave him alone to do that because he is magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
He really is. I mean, I'm going to get T-shirts, I swear. The guy is incredible. Let him do that, but then what we, as the Republican Party, need to turn around now is, while he's doing that, it's time for us to enunciate a positive vision for the country. Let those things have their impact, but they're going to have all the more. See, here's the problem. We're leaving ourselves as the bad guys while this happens. We don't.
Yes.
Gowdy's got this. We don't all have to spend all our time in the choir applauding Gowdy. He's got this, okay? He's killing them. He's murdering them. What he did yesterday was obscene, how badly he diced this person. I mean, my goodness. It was horrific. And he's going to continue. We're going to keep getting sound bites and stuff like that. Let him do that. But we can't continue, as I always say, we can't continue to let this country think that we are the party that disapproves of them and wants to tell them how to live their lives. We got to be the ones who offer them choice. We've got to be the ones who offer them liberty. We got to be the ones who look at them and say, look, you see all that? This is why we want government off your back in all these areas. And maybe we need to not just say in the areas that we like. Okay? We just want government off your back, period. End of story. And, oh, gee, here's some great ideas on how to do that. How to unleash, business, how to unleash this, unleash that. We need to have a positive message right now because, let me tell you something, America's really ready to hear it.
Yeah, and it's not just America that's ready to hear it. It's conservatives too that are ready to hear it, and that's another thing that goes back into this whole discussion of keeping up morale. It's one thing to be focused entirely on scandals and to be focused entirely on, oh God, what are they going to do next? It doesn't matter what the bad stuff is so much if we're doing a lot of good stuff. That's something that we don't really recognize so much, is that if we're doing a lot of good stuff, if we're bringing, the article that Fishy found an article the other day. It got 37 shares on Free Radical Network about privatizing a town in Georgia. It got 37 shares. That's huge when it comes. It's not so big when you think about pictures. When you're talking about pictures getting shared, it's that's fine. That's a number that exists. 37 shares for an article is almost unheard of for us. That's a story of success. That's a story of stuff getting done and stuff being efficient and good. And it's a small government message, and it's something that people wanted to hear about and people wanted to share. So that's a huge thing and something that we need to consider. Maybe we shouldn't be focused so much on Benghazi and the IRS thing and all of that stuff. It makes, it's good for sound bites. It's good for that, stuff. If you like the pugilist side of Trey Gowdy going at these guys, and of course everybody does, but there's more to government, there's more to conservatism, there's more to small government than hearings.
Right. And let me say, as someone who watched just about every minute of coverage of Clinton and the scandals around his administration and all of the things that happened at that time, there was an object lesson in that, and that is that charismatic Democrat politicians with a complicit media and a complicit entertainment industry and a complicit education system are harder to hold accountable. They just are. And the optics around trying to do so is more difficult for us. The way that people remember those Clinton scandals was that it was about sex, that Ken Starr was completely discredited because he had all this prurient interest in the Clintons' lives and the lives of the people with whom they interacted, and it was a witch hunt. And that sort of thing was used to great effect against Republicans going forward from there. As far as like big name top candidates, those sort of people that had connections, the people in Congress that dealt with that, we ought to have learned, and maybe we are now, that a certain amount of scandal fatigue and investigation overload is not going to make us appear to be a party that's focused on solutions. It is going to be a party that's focused on punishment. And the people in the millennial generation specifically, but generally the uninformed and the apolitical voter, what they see given to them in these media is the thing that imprints on them. It's like the first image they see of a particular subject. That's sort of where they land ideologically. If there's no base or center to them ideologically, that's what they take away from those things. And so the fewer optics we give them of that, if we talk about solutions and positive things about the country with equal fervor that we talk about coming out and holding people accountable for doing really bad things, it puts us in a much better position, a much stronger position. That millennial generation, etc., they are very interested in justice. That is how the left got them, because they phrase everything around justice for a particular group. We have to do that as well, and do it properly. And the more that we're out there doing it, the more that we're out there talking about solutions and better lives and hope for the country and getting back on track and ramping up the economy, all the kind of phrases you want to see, the more we have opportunity to point to those things to overwhelm some of the images of scandal fatigue.
Well, what about basically taking the things that are already working and packaging those? America needs look at all, just reel off. You can do it with the simplest of graphs. Reel off a quick comparison of the top 10 Republican and Democrat-run states in job creation and say America needs a Republican governor for president. Or look at North Dakota's job things. America needs, a North Dakota energy policy. And just reel these things off. Because let's face facts. One nice thing we got, welcome back, Ryan. One nice thing we got is that everything we're doing works and is working with real numbers. And I mean, it's just huge. That's one thing I'm pushing here in Colorado is, we're talking about the fracking ban and all this. I'm just telling people it's real simple. Just ask people, do you want to be California or North Dakota? What do you want to be? And people are like, well, oh, wow. Doesn't North Dakota have that 3% unemployment? Yeah, they do. That's why. I think, with, and of course then you'd want to package specifics into like the contract with America thing, although I don't even think now you'd want anything with that many details, But
Right, it needs to be memeable, whatever it is, you know?
Yeah, of course. But I mean, look, if Republican governors, if all their states are making a lot more jobs and balancing budgets, I mean, at least coming much closer, then don't we want a Republican governor for president? I don't just mean a governor. You can be just a Republican.
Right.
Rand Paul. You know, you want somebody who's like the Republican governors for president. I think people will look at that really quick and just say, "No, that's positive."
Yeah.
You're not telling me who Obama slept with. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
Because nobody really
else.
knows who Reggie Love is. Oh! Thanks, David.
Oh, good Lord. No, while we're on the topic of baseless accusations and stuff that turns everyone against us, I just want to bring this up. This is another thing. In addition to scandals, in addition to the junk that we find ourselves surrounded by and immersed in the conservative movement, instead of focusing on the positive stuff, instead of focusing on actual change and getting stuff done, let me see if I can screen share this real quick. So this is something that appeared. This is a picture that appeared on one of the people I know on their Facebook wall, and I wasn't particularly a fan. If you see that, that is Obama, a little thing of Obama. That's a urinal cake. And
Okay.
so this is a thing that exists. This was a picture that was getting shared around, and the kind of comments that this was generating, you had the one guy who wasn't the person who posted it. You had the one guy who had a overtly racial sentiment when it came to this thing, who made those comments and was roundly chastised. But there was a lot, there were comments that were just, it's weird, it's strange to me that there are people out there whose opinion is, this is helpful. I don't get it. I don't understand how this is helpful. That's the thing. Not racially motivated, but they think that this is helpful, that this is demoralizing to their to the leftists, assuming that you actually have any leftists on your friends list, on your wall that's going to look at this. But that was what it was. It was there was some idea that this was a good thing because it demoralizes the left somehow, instead of giving it ammunition, which is what it actually does. And this is something that gets widely shared. There are plenty of these pictures out there, plenty of similar stupid things that are making the rounds every day on conservative walls, instead of stories like the one out of Georgia with the great message of what a community can do when it is completely free to do what they want, to deal with services in a way that is free market, capitalism at work, instead of dealing with a bureaucracy. This is stuff that we spend time on, and I spent time on this because there was a back and forth going on. There's a conversation about, does this help, does it not help, whatever. And then somebody brought up Piss Christ, and somebody brought up oh well, if they can do Piss Christ, then this is
And
nothing.
we can do this, right? Yeah.
Oh, it's just freedom of expression. Yeah, it's freedom of expression.
You're just being too politically correct.
But freedom of expression doesn't mean that that you should just post stuff that's stupid.
Yeah.
And that's what I think this is.
Okay, I'm going to possibly interrupt everybody for a second. Mike, I have two connections going on here at my house. One is me and this conversation that I'm talking here that's on my laptop, but it's my desktop is the manager of this whole call, which is broadcasting it live on YouTube, and that connection actually dropped some time ago as it reported via my Hangout. But apparently it's continued to broadcast. So we're still broadcasting now.
Yes.
But the Hangout application on my desktop wants me to reload it and reconnect again, which would be the little, the Conservative Union logo down there. That's that connection. So I'm going to reconnect, and I'm hoping that doesn't kill everything.
I don't know.
Okay?
I think that might kill everything. So it might just be better to.
Will we
I mean,
still be friends afterward?
I'll
Yes.
still respect you in the morning.
Well, that's a new one.
I'll start respecting you in the morning. How about that?
Oh God.
Yeah, then do this. This sounds like a good reboot then.
This may give us it may actually give us two little torch logos is what I'm thinking, that maybe the first one disconnected from my computer and I'm going to make a second one. So I'm going to do it, because otherwise I would have no way to end the call. Who knows what I'm
Right.
going to do.
Okay.
This is technology, ain't it, Grand?
Yeah.
About to join a Hangout on air. I'm joining. See,
There
there's
it
two
is.
of me now. Oh my God.
Oh.
Hello, 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 hello. Hello.
Let's see if the feed changed
So
over.
I don't know, because Fishy was saying that that the feed was actually stuck on Andy and Corey rather than the display going to whoever is the live talker.
I made that happen.
Over. Andy, you're such a control freak.
Yes.
So I don't know. I don't know why it's not going to drop that original. Yay, technology. We may end up with a live recorded, because we may end up with a live recorded call for the next week and a half, 2 weeks, whenever it is I next reboot my computer. Who knows?
It worked. It worked. It's fine. It's perfect. We're good. I just watched the second Conservative Union thing pop up on the stream. There's like a 20-second delay or something, so it's good. It's working.
Okay,
My
so
delay's
it's
a
still,
little
Still
longer.
being broadcasted.
it's still broadcasting. Okay, cool. So we survived that little glitch. So, yay. And we were talking about Piss Obama.
Oh.
And we were talking about how there's a very active faction of the right that wants to fight back aggressively, and that's the only way I can explain it. And they think that we should use whatever mechanism is fun or effective, and they find those little Obama urinal cakes to be a great message. Let's send that out everywhere. Woohoo! And
Well, it's understandable when people were subjected to so much of Bush Hitler and you
Right.
know, burning him in effigy. It feels like revenge. What it is something very different. It's marginalizing their voice, but it feels good to do it. And you know, I've gone over this time and again about the self-indulgence of our side. We should look at ourselves and think about the discipline it's going to take in order to win something. And too often I've heard the comment from people, I am more interested in saying what I want to say, and consequences be damned, and anybody's reaction be damned. This is America. I should be able to say whatever I want to say. Absolutely, you should be able to. The question
and you are
is
able
that
to. Heck, you
wise?
can. Right.
Right, but the question is that wise? And that I don't think people think about as much. It just feels good to raise your fist and yell. It feels good to put a picture of Michelle Obama in an offensive depiction out there, because they feel attacked and they feel that this is striking back. My caution is always, does this get you more people coming to your side, listening to you, and then voting the way you want them to vote?
Right. Is it an effective marketing message? And I think that's what we have to, and it's so hard because I want to just yell and holler and rail, and I want to post the depressing, the world is over, it all sucks, nobody's ever going to, I want to do that too.
You want to be Mark Levin?
Yes, sometimes. Doesn't everybody want to just yell and scream and holler and hang up on people?
Jerk.
Yes,
Sorry.
you jerk.
Yeah, jerk. But by the same token, there's that think mnemonic. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And that's kind of a good thing to stop and think about before I post stuff on the CU, because there's a purpose that we're trying to do there in that community, and that's to grow the conservative movement. And you can't grow a movement by being nasty. You can only bring more people to you by being somebody that they want to hang out with, and it's really hard. It's really hard. And it's hard not to agree with our commenters, and it's hard to always want to take the opposite side and be the cheerleader and try to help them stay motivated and not want to scream and yell and holler and cuss. And I don't know, partly this thing once a week with y'all is like, okay, so I'm not the only one who's thinking this, and that's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But we need some victories. We need some victories too, because victory begets happiness and more victory, and you gotta have a little victory to hang on to. And I don't.
I just want to bring something up. Fishy pointed it out. I'm trying to find it in the conversation here that I have. I don't want to share the whole conversation, but it's something that was really interesting. It was an interesting perspective. Where is it? About anger. And no, we aren't the ones being competed on effigy. Mocking doesn't win votes, but helps to solidify the ones you have and will help put people off the fence. You still need to press your case to get new votes. I'm not seeing the comments that I'm trying to find. So I'll get back to you on that. But
that's a pretty good thing about mockery being the kind of thing that it doesn't bring in new people, but it does solidify your base. Using mockery.
That's not quite true, I think, because one of these comments reflected this later. The best sort of mockery that's out there right now, politically especially, is Colbert, Stewart. Now, we find a lot of it extremely offensive, but it is creatively done. It is cleverly done. It is bite-sized bits of information. Some segments go as long as 8 minutes or something, but it's still, half of that is just throwaway jokes that are kind of bolstering the point. But the delivery of that sort of mockery, and you see it when you see conservatives share things like, Jon Stewart slays Obama on the IRS, whatever. You see those headlines, it's ridiculous. But the point is, that is skillful mockery. This is kindergarten antics to me.
Yes.
And that's a big difference.
Isn't it awful that the best mockery of the Democrats has come from Democrat nighttime hosts?
Yes, it is. It's very sad.
It's ridiculous. That's how much, pardon my French, that's how much we suck. It really gets me.
Well, again, those guys are, not just in the business of mocking Republicans, and when they take on a Democrat, it does highlight it really, really strongly for us. They're in the whole business of mockery, period. There's very little that they take seriously, and there's a whole ethic around there are no sacred cows, there's nothing that we can't ridicule. until you get to certain politically correct things. But that's what they bill themselves as being: wholly irreverent, nothing is safe. And that sort of frees them up within the confines of political correctness to mock anything and everything they like. And sometimes they even violate politically correct barriers, but not as you would imagine. But they're daring, they're clever, and they're skilled, and they're very experienced. And that's 20 years in some cases of experience of that sort of humor that we don't have in people on our side in the kind of force and number and skill that they do.
I have the quote, by the way, from the thread. It's rage will win elections, and we must keep our rage every way we can. Keep up our rage every way we can. That comment was pretty well rebutted by a Democrat, in fact, who brought up that his rage, his personal rage, worked wonders for the recall effort against Scott Walker, where he ranted against his progressive friends that followed the governor around and shouted him down in public events and picketed his every move, all of that stuff. You know, he pointed out pretty well that rage is not, and anger is not exactly the best way to sell a message. So
that's not a strategy. Rage
No.
is not a strategy.
Well, and I think it comes to people will vote for the person they know they like, they want to be like, and that they have an affinity for. The reason that Stewart and Colbert are successful with their sarcasm and their mockery is because they are the cool kids. And if you agree with them and understand their jokes, that makes you able to sit at the cool table with them. So you want to be on their side. You want to be cool like them. And you want to be cool like Obama, and by voting for him, that makes you cool like Obama. Is the reason why do people like celebrities? Because I want to be like you. I want to be able to sing like you. I want to have the riches like you, and I want to. It's the affinity principle, and you know we're social animals, and that's just what human nature is.
And let's take a
We
moment
vote
to
for people we
say,
like and want to be like, and that's why gentle mockery that includes, and that's why we Republicans, we adore George Bush at the gridiron because he'd make fun of himself, that self-deprecating humor. Oh man, I can agree with you, and I'm going to stand right next to you and be on your side. Woohoo, you're my guy. It's appealing.
well, but let's also take a moment to talk about the whole concept when we're talking about people being affiliated or having affinity for certain politicians and whatever, and how that's cultivated. One of the responses that you get talking to people about changing messaging and things like that is, well, the younger generation is stupid, or the uninformed voters were just being led along by people and governed by people who have no grasp of issues. And that's
the sheeple. Let's just call them something names.
Right, but here's the party, us, advocating for giving people more power over their lives, and our very advocates, the people that should be out there pushing that message, are saying, don't trust the people with making decisions. It's a dichotomy you cannot overcome if you're going to take both of those positions. The problem, too, is this is the world we live in. These are the times. This is the battlefield that we're on. I don't care how bad it is. If your sole strategy is lamenting the fact that this is where we are, you are in my way and you're useless. And I'm sorry to be so firm with people, but it's true. You are crapping up my chance at more liberty, and I won't take it. And so I'm going to call people on our side out for that. I get really indignant about it because if you don't have an understanding of where we are, you can never get to where we want to be, because you've got to work with the world, thank you, Alinsky, as it is, not as I would like it to be.
Yeah, and there's a line between learning, understanding, and recognizing the world as it is, and obsessing and lamenting over it. I'm going to study it, I'm going to learn it, I'm going to understand it, I'm going to figure out how to work around it, and I'm going to move through it, in it, and of it, because I have to be of the world. And the people who want to just sit back and go, oh, but people are stupid, that's fine. You go off in the corner and do that. And on November 4th, vote Republican. Other than that, I don't have any time for you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, and it sounds horrible and rude and mean, and I don't care anymore. It's about my liberty. And if you're in my way, I am shoving you out with a huge, sharp elbow.
And I think I like that dichotomy of we are the party of putting more power and control in the hands of the people because we don't trust government. But by the same token, those very same people on our side who want to devolve government down to the lowest level, they will, in another conversation, talk about how the people are stupid idiots and can't be trusted. And it's, well, then why would you want to give them more power?
And a lot of them don't. A lot of them don't on a
They just
lot of
want to,
issues.
they want to take the power away from the Democrats and give it to
Yes.
themselves.
Yes. And we need to clarify which of those people are really on our team. Now, we may have to elect some big government or, keep and retain or work with the guys who didn't, lose their elections and get tossed out on their bahukas. But we may have to work with people that are really bad on liberty and really bad on big government for a while. But meanwhile, we should be talking in cultural references as much as possible about why big government is so bad and start moving the needle culturally for people to say, hey, that guy is a jerk. Why do I want him in power over this much? I'm going to give him just this much power, and then I don't have to worry about how bad a jerk he is. Then I can choose. And that goes right back to the Party of Choice's message so beautifully and so eloquently, because it's not just market, it's personal stuff. People need to be able to make their own choices, whether it's healthcare, whether it's their jobs, whether it's the kind of education they get, all sorts of things. And there's a bunch of people on our side who say, yeah, until you get to that one thing.
And
But
I
then
want
you to
nobody
withdraw.
to be able to smoke in any restaurant in the city ever because smoking is bad. Ugh. Oh, sorry, was that me going on a Dan Patrick rant again?
Okay, so I have something on that. Like, big government hurts people. I shared a post with you guys that I asked a Democrat who's reasonable, with all these scandals and all this disaster going on, what can we do to reach Democrats and moderates and people like you? And he just said, point out, don't go for Benghazi and the big things that the media completely ignored. Go for the littler things that affect everyday life. Go for what's happening on the border. Show that the Democrats are allowing this to happen if they'll allow pictures to get out. If anyone risks jail time or whatever to get these pictures out, share those and let people know, that there's toddlers living basically in cages without toilets and things like that, and let them know how Obamacare is hurting getting rid of jobs. Let them know how this thing is going to hurt them and their job prospects and how it'll affect their family and stuff like that. And I think we need to get better at marketing that in a consolidated effort to show, okay, this is bad for you because of this. This is bad for this person instead of this. I think we can help get some people on our side if we can learn how to do that effectively and show them that, look, big government is bad. When big government gets involved, there's too much bureaucracy. They can't do anything efficiently. They might have good motives. I don't really believe most of them do, but maybe some of them do. But look at the outcome of it. And kind of like Andy was saying earlier, the outcome of what's going on with Democrats in charge is terrible. Look at Detroit. Look at our country. The outcome of Republican-led states, Republican-led cities is incredible. There's very, very low unemployment. Jobs, pays higher, standard of living's better, health is better, everything all around. So we need to get better at showing how Democrats hurt people. There's someone in the Conservative Union, I think it's Delbert Warner, who uses that hashtag all the time, Democrats hurting people.
Yeah, he
Anytime
does.
something bad comes out. I think we need, maybe not necessarily jump on the hashtag, but we need to follow that and show that. Show, not just in the conservative union, but in our public streams, maybe go into sensible politics or thinkers or whatever, and share some of these pictures and stories and help them see how the IRS targeting people they don't agree with. If it was Nixon doing that, everyone would freak out. So why are we letting Obama do it? And this, if President Cruz gets in and he doesn't like what you're saying and he comes after you, I mean, help them wake up and see that somehow. So how can we do that better?
I think that there's some trouble with using that terminology with going at it like that particularly, because that's just going to make them more interested in keeping the Democrats in, because, oh, it's a foregone conclusion. The Republicans will definitely use it against us, so we have to work that much harder to make sure that Democrats are the guys in charge. I'm a little worried about going at it like that. But I do think that absolutely we talked about this a few weeks ago, I think, pointing out that people are victims of the left and of government and of regulations and bad stuff like that. Talking about people whose tree houses are they're being sued by the city because their treehouse doesn't apply to the code doesn't see it as a proper building or some ridiculous stuff. Going through all of the various the mailbox, that was another story that did pretty well over on Free Radical Network's Facebook page, was the story about these little libraries that pop up. Just roadside libraries, little boxes with boxes. We have boxes, boxes with books in them. Stop laughing. Boxes with books in them that people could just go in and take a book and replace it, whatever, getting taken down or being forced to be removed. There are actual things where people are getting hurt. Businesses that aren't getting started because of permitting, because you need to have some piece of paper that says that you can braid other people's hair. I don't know how we want to do this, what the correct hashtag is, or whatever. But there are definitely stories out there. Maybe it's not about being political about it. Maybe it's not about saying Democrats or Republicans or whatever. Maybe it's just about showing that these are situations where the government is
hurting people and
government
in general. Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does always come back to making it personal. That's where the whole Sandra Fluck War on Women thing was so effective, because there were women who said, oh yes, I need to be able to get birth control for me personally. It wasn't some out there vague concept like liberty and freedom and wanting to open up a small business where nobody really, and having an IRS inspection if you want to open up a tax exempt organization. Most people aren't going to want to do that, so the IRS thing doesn't necessarily bother them. But immigration, yes, that the unbridled illegal immigration where we have absolutely open borders right now, we're not even trying to push people back at the border. If we see somebody approaching our border, we welcome them across and we put them into the system, which means they come in forever. We are not even stopping them from coming in when we look at them across the river. We watch them cross the river and they come up to our Border Patrol agents and they get put into the system and they're here forever. It's a absolute open border, and that, I think, it does affect people. It's certainly and because there's talk of flying them to that city in Virginia that had to stand up and say no, not here. We're going to put them on a plane and send them to New York. We're going to put them on a plane and send them to California. There are people who are beginning to see, oh my gosh, I would have to compete for jobs with these people. I don't know exactly how to personalize it.
The kind of jobs would be under work visas, the kind of competition for jobs that you're talking about go under work visas. This is a whole different sociological problem. I don't know that work is the angle at all that you'd want to go through, but the compassion angle certainly works. Holy
Yeah.
crap, how horrible is it that we're exploiting all these people and they're risking all this to get here because somebody's willing to pay them a few cents more than in their home country. And we've got heads of large companies and corporations that are fully taking advantage of all of this misery and capitalizing, no, I don't want to say capitalizing, but profiting off of it.
Yeah, definitely going through. It's horrendous to see those pictures. It's absolutely horrendous to see those pictures of the little kids and just the glut of people that are being packed into these warehouses.
But you know what? We need to give some more money to Health and Human Services, and make that department bigger so that they can have more money to take care of those people and to transport them to their families and get them to that. I can see a liberal taking that and saying, yes, I agree with you. We have to take care of these poor children,
We
and
do.
we have to get them diapers, and we need to increase the federal budget for DHS, and create a new department to take care of these refugee children. And we need to have a new refugee bureaucracy to take care of these refugee children. And then
We
it
need to
becomes
figure out how to. We need to figure out how to reform immigration. We need to figure out why are these people coming in? How are they coming in? What is
so
the,
you would
what is allowing them?
leave them there in Mexico?
How is it that they
You
are
Republicans, you hate
living
brown
in?
people.
No, it's an effective message. It's not something that you can just get stonewalled by a liberal on. I don't think that you can do that, because you have to go back to what's the deal? How is it that our borders our immigration is in such a bad shape that these people can't get in the regular way, that they can't get in as regular immigrants? How about that? Go into that. That's a discussion that I think is very easy to have and very easy to maneuver yourself into, and something that is effective.
Right. And when we got into this first subject, when it first started hitting the news cycles, I did have that conversation with several people on my wall, where I kept challenging them. What do you do in light of the fact that there is a process that our bureaucracy has put in place, that when a person is here, there is a processing period. There is a year sometimes in which it takes to deal through all of the cycles of processing a person that's come here illegally. That means you've got a year perhaps of maintenance of all of these children. You've got a year perhaps to deal with the large numbers of people who are already here. Whatever else is going on the border, this is an imminent problem right now, and nobody, on the conservative side wants to see people, victimized by coyotes. Nobody on any side wants to see people victimized by those folks. But it's a very different story when you're talking about the amount of funds that are going to be involved. And when we were talking about those issues, we kept coming back to different ideas like a Southern Ellis Island or something like that, having that opportunity. But there's so much resistance to even, in some cases, legal immigration, that it's a very difficult subject. Right now, it's a crisis. There are people that are hurting, that need help, and obviously conservatives are compassionate people by nature of what they do. We just haven't figured out a private way to deal with it yet. And in the meantime, what we've got is the visual of the same bunch that was at Bundy Ranch now going down to the border, and I don't know what good that does.
Yeah, sitting around and shouting "they took our gerbs" isn't going to be an effective way to message little kids being abused really by the government. And the system and the way that it is totally screwed up.
The whole thing is it's so heinous, and just soulless the way the federal government has manipulated Central and South American governments and Central and South American people, and absolutely taken advantage of human nature by putting the word out that if you can just get them across the border, they can be here forever and we will take care of them. Because that's the message that is going out to people in Central and South America. Just get your kid across the border however you can. Give $5,000 to the coyote, put them on the train, and as long as the kid knows knows the name of a second cousin thrice removed in Peoria, the United States government will send them to an American relative who doesn't have to be here legally. They will send an illegal child to another illegal family with some court date that they never have to make. And so as soon as it's been done so very cynically by our government to create this.
I think this is a great opportunity to point out how bad open borders are. I mean, when Obama essentially said we're not going to send anyone back, this flood started. And
Right.
the conditions down there are horrible. I think this is a great opening talking point to say, look, this is really bad news. We can't have this. We need to close the border and tell them that we're going to send you back so they stop coming. Once that happens, we need to make legal immigration much quicker and easier and cheaper. We need to allow a lot more people in, and that's a compassionate view. If their country is that bad that they're willing to risk everything, traveling across the desert and sending their 2-year-old kid up with a drug dealer to get here, let's make it easier for people to come in. And I mean, we were kind of joking at work today about it, and this is a semi-serious suggestion. It's also a joke. I mean, look how many families are out there looking to adopt, and you have all these toddlers in these camps. People wait 6 months trying to adopt, a year, 2, 3 years, pay $100,000 and still don't have a kid. Let's just say, look, the parents abandon these kids. If you want one, come down and choose one. Free adoptions. Come down, choose the kids. These kids get a great life. I mean,
Can we
it's
make
half a
the
joke.
point? Can we make the point that if
It's
this
also
sort
kind
of
a serious.
behavior, if this behavior had been committed by an American citizen with American children, the CPS people would be on them so fast that the news wouldn't have time to catch up to the cycle before those children were ripped from the home. I just think we need to make that point as well.
That's true. If I were to put even a 10-year-old child on a train and send him to Washington State, absolutely, I pay a stranger $5,000, a criminal stranger, to take this unaccompanied minor across state borders, and then the kid ends up in Washington State, just showing up and saying, "Oh, hi, Mr. Police Officer, sir. I don't have any place to go. Hi." Yeah, they would find me and they would throw my butt in jail for abandoning my child or mistreating my child.
Okay, there's a story of a really close by to us in Houston area mother who was sitting in the front yard with her child riding her bike up and down the street who got picked up by CPS because she wasn't eyes on the child the whole time. I'm
Wow.
not kidding. And this is what we have to compare it to.
Hey, thanks, Andy and Corey. They have to leave. Bye, guys.
Sorry, guys.
Sorry,
Gotta go.
guys.
Night.
Congratulations on your gubernatorial election today.
Well, we'll see how.
No.
All
So
right.
much enthusiasm, right? Okay.
All right.
Bye. Yeah, I think that's a good angle that, well, but then we have Jeb Bush saying it's an act of love, and it truly is. If I was a parent in Honduras, I can't really necessarily criticize the poor people in Honduras. Mom's been in there with the 5 children, and her husband went to America years ago, and he's been sending money to us every year. And now I've heard that if I can get my kids across the border, then the kids can hook up with their dad, who's been there illegally for 5 years. And then eventually with family reunification, I'll be able to go. So ba-bing, we can all be Americans. Yeah, who can blame that mom for putting her eldest child on a train?
Well, and we do have sort of a comparable history to look at in two ways, two different Holocaust type of things in our near and distant past. Not only have we had the Holocaust as is known from World War II, and with lots of people doing whatever they could to get their children and their families out of Nazi-occupied areas, or about to be Nazi-occupied areas, however it would go. We also have massive numbers of people slaughtered in Africa over the past 15, 20 years for anything from diamonds to just power, guns in the hands of children. They've been taking children and enlisting them well, conscripting them into military service, among these different factions and warring factions, whatever. And the only reason you don't see the kind of refugees here from the African troubles that we've seen is distance and the cost to get them here. That is it. So there's this beacon that we are as a country that is great, and everybody wants to come here because they know that there's some freedom involved in that, and part of that is freedom from things like crappy wars and horrible corrupt leaders and terrible things that could happen to them. It is
And
no
dirty water
wonder.
that gives you diarrhea. I mean, there's some
Right.
basics that we have that we take for granted that are luxuries for people. Electricity available 24 hours a day.
Right? But when you look at that, the whole thing hinges in a lot of ways on, can we both be that beacon to the world and keep the freedoms and the safety that we have? And a lot of people are struggling with that. I understand it. Whether it's, freedom to do whatever because of the American political structure, whether it's freedom economically, it's a really hard time for everybody in the world. But of course, we have a lot of people here thinking, America first. I get that. I'm one of those people who believes that you have to help your own first, absolutely. But we
Yeah, let's
also
be
have
like
to
Canada. Canada's been doing that.
we're also humanitarian people. We really are. And maybe the problem is that we haven't figured out a private sector way to assist, or maybe that the government is not interested in allowing private sector help in this particular area. But the main thing I just want to go back to is that messaging around this is very, very tricky, and people who simply have nothing more to contribute than put them on a bus and send them back are not serious people. I'm sorry. There is a serious process we're locked into based on the law that we have. There are serious crises of processing and running through all these people. The border is hundreds and hundreds of miles long. It's very difficult to police, and we have no will in Washington to do it, and we will not have will in Washington to do it until there's a change of regime, as it were.
Right.
And so the priority ought to be do what we can, as much as we can, to mitigate the problems that we're having at the border, but work like hell to make sure that that bunch is not in power come 2017 in January.
That's pretty much the overwhelming answer to all of these questions is, if we don't win, then we can't do much. And that's what needs to constantly be on our minds, and something that we need to remember, and something that will keep us up when we're down, when it comes to, oh God, this issue again, oh God, this issue, is we need to win. We need to focus on winning, and that means, dealing with Thad Cochran's. That means, being supportive of McConnell's, of all of these guys, because that's what we need if we're going to actually have a successful majority in the Senate. And we're doing pretty well in Congress. We're doing pretty well in the House. So hopefully we can get that done. Hopefully we can get both the House and the Senate, and get some pressure going on, and then build up momentum going into 2016. But the thing is that we need to remember that it's the elections that matter here. Right? These issues only get addressed if the elections are won.
And
Or
let's
they
understand.
or lost too, because
Right.
if they are lost, they are going to be addressed, but they're not going to be addressed the way that we want them to be addressed.
And let's make very clear what support Thad Cochran, support Mitch McConnell means. That means that once they've won, they've passed their primary, they are the guy in power. That's the end of that issue until the next election. Yes, you can go right away and start recruiting the opponent for the next 6 years. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you had better be in this office or on the phone or on email with those guys. Let them know as well what you expect out of them. And me in Texas, it doesn't do any bit of good for me in Texas to register my displeasure with McConnell at all. He's not listening to me. It's the people on the ground. And if you're not going to win the election, you've got to do your best to hold him accountable for what he does after the election. That's just the way this goes. That means if the battle is over and you've lost that skirmish, move on to the next one. Make sure that that guy that has that office, whether it's Cochran, whether it's McConnell, whether it's Lindsey Graham, whoever it is listening to you, because guarantee you the guy that's on the other side of the aisle that would be running against him in November is not even going to let you in the door to the office to talk about those issues. You need, terrible politician it is, you need to be familiar to them. They need to know you so that they're listening to you and not all the other voices that come in. Yeah, you may not have as many dollars as the next guy to influence them, but you'd better make it known that you can make noise. Build up those networks. Get your social media. Start hitting them, reporting as media on what they're doing. Tell people what they're doing. Tell people what you expect them to do. Make that a practice. Complaining about it does nothing in the long run if you're not willing to do the work behind it.
Pretty much. Kill that issue right there.
Well, yes, and there are a lot of people that I end up just ignoring because they vent, and that's all they do is they vent, and I don't even acknowledge those comments. You know, you put a story out there for purpose A, and somebody's going to comment something per B, or the answer is going to be, you know, put them on a bus back to Honduras. McConnell sucks. Okay, whatever. I've already moved on to the next thing, because that's just, I hope it made you feel better for typing that, because that's all the effect that has.
Yeah. Well, it's not all the effect either. Going back to the urinal cakes situation,
Well, true.
put them back on trucks and load them up and send them back across the border is pretty equivalent, to be honest, with the Obama urinal cake. Except it's even worse in some cases, because thinking about it, these are real people. These are real kids. This isn't a public figure that we're talking about that people can mock or whatever. It's these are real lives at stake here, and real lives that are getting endangered. So that's the pack them up and send them back statements are less than helpful, in my opinion.
But I'm not going to take my time to counter all of that and say, but I know you were expressing anger, but did you seriously mean that? Don't you think we need to work towards a solution? Yeah, I don't have the time for all of that every single time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
Right. And that's a good thing about what we've been trying to do, I think, as a collective here, is just to flood the market with positive messaging, better messaging, showing people by example. You can criticize somebody else's bad example all you want to, but you'd better have a good alternative instead. And so I wouldn't dare approach anyone about a urinal cake message or something like that until I have, a coherent thought about what they ought instead to be doing. And I know that that's the habit and the policy that we've been striving for amongst this group in the refinery, is coming up with the solution. coming up with the better messaging, giving the example, and then flooding that out there. I thought it was very instructive recently when we were talking about dealing with the deal with it meme that the Organizing for America, no, it was the Democrats, official Democratic Party put out with the Obama and the sunglasses and all that sort of thing. And what was great about it is that all of the folks in the Conservative Union that were talking about it in their community were talking about how do we respond to this in a way that's effective, that mocks that arrogance, which is good mockery, mocks the arrogance of the Democrats and the president, but also makes really salient points like that quick. And it was a great conversation that happened before the messaging went out publicly. And that was, it didn't take hours, it didn't take 20 people voting on something. It was a brief conversation among a few posters who refined the message, there's that word again, before using the messaging. And it was an effective bit of messaging, and it did what it was supposed to do. It was far better than some things that major outlets were out there pushing that had to do with, say, Reagan memes or whatever. It was
the like a boss stuff, like a boss.
Yes, like a boss.
And what so many people, it was that bumper sticker of Obama that said like a boss, and what so many people were doing on Twitter was changing the words like a boss and changing the picture and mocking Obama. And what we did instead was adding reading your email. I'm looking at the things that we put out. Reading your emails like a boss. Listening in on your phone calls like a boss. And if you like your plan, you can keep your plan like a boss. Blocking veterans from open-air memorials like a boss. Those things where instead of changing the message, we took his message of Obama like a boss, isn't he great, he's like a boss, and we just twisted it or reminded people of the things they already knew but had perhaps forgotten, that to Obama, like a boss is more like a dictator and not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
And that was much better mockery, much better and much more clever messaging than an Obama urinal cake. It says far more, it's far better and more effective, and actually causes some twinges among people that are supporters or maybe voted for him. The hardest thing that we're going to have to get over is people who don't want to admit they were wrong. Now, the popularity numbers being what they are among the president, people still don't want to think that they've made a mistake. And when they're invested in a candidate or something like that, it is difficult to get them past that hurdle to say, you know what, I didn't do that right. I really screwed up on that one. I made the wrong call. People don't want to be in the wrong. It's difficult to get them to do that, but you can use a message like this, listening in on your phone calls like a boss, and that's causing a little bit of discomfort there, but they're not blaming themselves. Now they feel like, well, I was taken. I was cheated. I was lied to. That's a different conversation from you're stupid.
Yes.
Right. It's okay to have been cheated. And it's okay to have been lied to. That's kind of the honorable victim rather than the foolish dupe.
Fool me once, shame on you, I believe is the term.
Yes, there you go. There you go. And you know what? The difference with the way we approached our takeover of that meme, or our response to that meme, compared to what we were seeing on on Twitter, we were not self-indulgent. We were not approaching our response to that meme as, look at my cool Photoshop skills. It was, how do I come up with a response that is not going to make people think I'm clever, but is actually going to make people think Obama's bad or make people doubt Obama. It wasn't about us. And that, right, I think was a different it was different than some of what I was seeing in the other memes.
It was
The other
also
meme-
not the. I'm sorry. I was just going to say it also wasn't self-indulgent in the way that the Obama like a boss, Reagan like a boss, Reagan
Oh.
like a boss, really like a boss, Reagan.
Reagan.
Reagan Tourette's is something that we have.
That is fabulous! Oh my gosh, Reagan Tourette's.
I like that. I was at the time thinking of the dog with the bacon strips, going Reagan.
Yeah. It's something that happened. I missed it. I wasn't there for it, but I'm sure he was a really good dude and stuff and things, but a little bit much sometimes. Especially.
You know what's a bad feeling? When you take the lid off of the styrofoam cup that you got at Jack in the Box and you look in and there's a lot of styrofoam pieces floating in your Coke that you've been drinking all night.
Ooh. See, that's why you go to
bad.
Sonic. That's why you got to go to Sonic instead. See.
Okay, done with that Diet Coke. Crap.
Gross.
How much styrofoam did I just ingest?
Yeah.
I've been toxified. Oh, well.
On that whole messaging thing and on that whole messaging thing, what is this show about? I just want to briefly shift, if I may, into something that I thought was really fascinating, a really interesting discussion that happened over the past day and a half, really. One of our friends over at Free Radical Network, Chris, I'm not sure which last name we're supposed to use for him right now, and he doesn't have a Twitter handle. So
on the piece, it's Busby.
Yes, on the piece, it's Busby. So Christopher Busby wrote something for us on Free Radical Network. This is his second article, and it got a huge amount of likes. It's got 176 likes. It's more likes than I've ever gotten in a single piece, and I'm very jealous of that. But it's a really interesting article about the GOP and the generation gap. And he is very thorough, going through basically what the situation is, and talking about demographics, and talking about a lot of different things. How people vote in their younger years impacts how they vote long term, and how we need to be more open and more appealing to young people. And I think while it's a really good it illustrates what the problem is and what's going on, and there is a solution that he suggests. I just think that there might be more subtle ways of doing it. He suggests that we need to re-examine. Don't get caught up in patriotism, constitutionality, and the rule of law. That's one of the things that he has bolded. He doesn't. He goes on.
The phrasing, or the concept. Is he talking don't use those phrases because they have no meaning, or not abandon the concepts, but don't
abandon. No. Let me just read this paragraph.
I'm sorry, I hadn't read it.
I'm sorry. And I think it's in the. Oh nope, I didn't put it in there. I do not mean to suggest that the Republican Party should abandon these principles. In fact, I believe that these need to remain a core part of our party and what we stand for. However, as a whole, the millennial generation has fallen out of touch with these. While the constitutionality of a law might make a difference to your average baby boomer or silent generation voter, it is not especially important to those from the younger generations. Constitutional muster is simply a pathway to enact the law you desire. Whether it falls into original intent of the Constitution is largely irrelevant matter, as long as you have the votes of the current Supreme Court. More important questions that resonate with the younger generation are: how does this law affect me? How does the law affect the economy? How does the law affect other people? Is the law socially tolerant and accepting? In the same vein, focusing too much on the process by which the Obama administration governs matters much less to your average voter under 30. Much fanfare has been made over the number of executive orders that Obama administration has signed and the methods by which he has selectively enforced certain laws. Attacking President Obama on these points can certainly gain some sympathy among some voters, but by and large you won't get many voters upset about the president bypassing Congress to enact a policy they otherwise support. So if they support the policy and Obama goes around the Congress, they're not going to really pay
And
too much.
justifies the means is really, really, really deeply embedded.
Yes. Most sadly for me, patriotism has become a de-emphasized value in this generation. The good news is that messaging based on patriotic values will likely not hurt with millennial voters. The bad news is that it won't help either, and the Republican Party has done a lot of messaging based solely on patriotism, which is true. I think that we can all agree that that's true. Patriotism, the rule of law, and respect for constitutional authority are all essential building blocks of the Republican Party. A key step in staying a principled and strong political party is rebuilding those values in our current and future generations. Such an endeavor, however, is a long-term political project and necessity. In the short term, though, using them as the basis for issue or candidate messaging will only wind up with continued losses among younger voters. So this is back to the discussion that we had last week or the week before about turning up the levels on your messaging, and which things that you should focus on messaging and which things that you should maybe not go to so much. Talk about the way that the town in Georgia privatized things and how much better the situation is there. Talk about the economic miracle of Texas. Talk about that sort of stuff. Maybe less about other things. Talking about presidential powers and stuff that people don't really understand. People don't get. It's very much in the weeds. So that's just one of a bunch of different points that Chris makes here. His final important deal is he's talking more about we are going to have to be flexible when it comes to the candidates that we support and the beliefs and points that we make. I think that he makes it a little bit more forcefully than
He just froze.
I thought it was me. I thought it was
No.
my computer.
JD just froze.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. He was right in the middle of a good thought.
Right. Ugh. I
JD.
just sent him a message. Maybe he'll get it.
Where'd
He's
you
probably still there going on talking.
He's still
Just
talking.
carry on as it were. Right. And we are frozen to him. So, no, Chris made a lot of interesting points there, and I think he made them maybe a little more forcefully than I might have. But he's a very much younger, generation than I am. The important thing is the discussion is happening, that people are able to talk about these concepts and these issues, and he is making people uncomfortable. I mean, here's the website motto again for us.
Yeah,
He's making people uncomfortable and thinking through their assumptions. We've got to understand the very fact that demographics are what they are. And when you're looking at what they are and how many people are that young that will still be voting years after I'm dead, you've got to understand what motivates them. You've got to understand their thinking. Chris is not necessarily advocating that those are ideal voters. What Chris is trying to do is, in the short term, give us places of connection with those voters. And I thought that was really good. Now, there are a lot of people who are so defensive because they feel that every attempt to do things differently is an attack on their values, their norms, and we get those responses, and I have been getting them.
You're just gonna be a Democrat and blah blah blah, and that's incorrect. But the fears are well founded because there are a lot of people who take.
What is going on?
I don't know. You're turned sideways. It was in portrait, not landscape. The fears are well founded because there are those politicians and consultants who take the expedient route they know the demographics out there, and they know that we need to get the Hispanic and the Asian community, and we need to get blacks, and we need to get children, young people. And so what we have to do, and we know that Hispanics are illegal immigrants, so we have to be in favor of amnesty. They'll just go for that quick, easy solution rather than really trying to understand that demographic group and trying to understand what a Hispanic voter cares about, what a black voter cares about. And when you do actually investigate those voting blocks and find out what matters to them, oddly, it seems that they are actually human more than they are anything else. And what matters to them is their family, their jobs, their economy, their money. They want their car to work. They want to be able to communicate with family far away. They want to take a vacation, and they want to not get burgled in their own homes. I mean, that's all basic stuff that really doesn't necessarily have anything to do with being brown or black or 18.
Well, and there's a bit of tribal politics. This is the phrase for it that Chris is referencing when he's talking about the millennial generation, that I think is stronger in some ways than, you know, people's ethnicity or their race or the religious background or whatever. There's a far more by tribal politics sort of thing. Oh gosh, I gotta mute. Hang on.
Our phone was ringing. Yes,
No,
I think
it's a
with the younger.
helicopter.
I think
You
with
can't
the
hear
young.
that helicopter?
That's a helicopter?
Yeah, a helicopter just flew right over my house.
Ooh, they're probably searching. Do you have
Yes,
people running
sorry,
around?
NSA.
Doors
But
locked? Have your gun with you?
but those whole the whole millennial thing, these people are voting not ideologically necessarily. They're voting more based on how their association with whatever organization or politician makes them feel.
Because
And
the assumption is, if you're my friend and you make me feel good, then your ideas and your philosophy is like mine.
yes, and at you got to look at the other side of it too. Conservatives tend to do that too. They won't look at it the same way, but someone who resonates with them on their particular issue it's the same phenomenon, tribal politics. Their tribal politics just happens, conservative-wise, to be based much more on rule of law, constitution, patriotism, the things that Chris is talking about. So when they look at this other generation that doesn't have those values foremost, then that is a different tribe to them, and they don't understand, or they don't really want to understand, people who don't get the Constitution and the rule of law. And we get into the same situation. We argue that those people are stupid for the way they vote, but we sort of adopt some of the same habits too.
You're really stupid, but please vote for me.
Right. So I mean, yeah.
It's like
How is
some
that an
liberals in
appealing
Hollywood. I hate you, buy my product. We're doing the exact same thing, but since we're not cool, they're not going to buy our product.
Sorry about that, guys. I didn't mean to punk out on you, but my internet died.
Well, we assumed you had done it on purpose.
Well,
I was all offended.
sorry.
We cried.
What I guess I think I know where we're at now. So yeah, it was really interesting to me that so many people were interested in that article and liked it. And it was and to me that's the real thing that was interesting to me, was the sheer number of likes that it got, and the fact that it was on the subject matter it was on, and the comments that showed up in the on the article were very interesting and not particularly positive. In fact, in fact, disagreeing with some of the premise of the article. I thought that was really an interesting situation, that it got so many likes, but the comments are mostly opposed to the sentiment of the article, I think.
Were they opposed to the concept that we need to pursue the youth vote, or were they more
There, it was
fear-based, thinking that
yes,
he's telling us we need to change our platform and become
platform.
Democrats?
It was
There's so much
basically
of
that.
fear.
It's
That,
it's
and that's why we have such a hard time trying to convince people to change their messaging, because they think we're trying to convince them to change the product.
right.
We're not trying to change the product. We're trying to change the advertising.
Yes, this is not new Coke
Nice.
versus classic Coke. This
It's
is
a new ad campaign.
yes, it's an ad campaign. That's all it is.
Have a
Yeah.
Coke and a smile versus what is it now?
Polar bears and
Polar
Santa.
bears and Santa. Nice.
Versus global warming. Yay.
Yeah. Coke adds life was a big slogan for years. Yeah, nobody's going to buy that now. That's
No,
old and outdated. The Pepsi generation. I'm sorry, I just think of Michael Jackson setting his hair on fire.
Good times. Good
too
times.
soon. Too soon. Not cool. Oh, let's avoid talking about that. Um, no, that's exactly right. This is and that's what I have in my mind. When I read this article, the thing that I thought about, and I'm illustrating that I thought about it by pointing at my head. Um, what I thought about it was exactly that point. The idea of marketing. That it's a marketing situation. That it's talking about how we, you know, what is our brand and who are who are the messengers of our brand, and is Rick Santorum the guy that I want out there talking about contraceptives? Is
Oh,
he the guy?
I just looked at Coke.com or Coca-Cola.com, and yeah, live positively
I,
is their current
mm,
message. Okay, and there's another Coca-Cola freestyle, because that's the way people think. But the Coke formula has not changed. They changed the bottling, but they're
they
not
took
changing
out
the
sugar and
formula.
they put in high fructose corn syrup, but that's
Well,
it.
yeah. Or unless you're buying it in Mexico, then you can get the stuff with the actual sugar.
So wait, so we want Mexican stuff to come across the board.
Only Coke.
Just
Wait,
bring the
Coke?
cases, set the cases
We
down,
want
and go
Coke.
back.
We want
Just
Coke.
drop off the Coca-Cola and go back.
We want Coke, and we want Coke from Mexico is what I'm being told now.
Sure,
It's
sure.
very confusing. No, but I think that's really the solution to the problem that is being posed. Is not about changing values. It's not about changing things. Because and that's a comment I made on somebody's post. I don't remember if it was mine or whoever, because I try and go and click on all of the shares for the article and see if I can throw my input in there. But on
Brainwash
one of
people, yes.
yeah on one of the on one of my on one of the threads that I participated in, um, I just came to the realization that, hey, Rick Santorum's views aren't really all that out there. They
Mm-mm,
aren't. It's
mm-mm.
just that he's really, really not the guy that you want to try and express any of them, because he doesn't relate to people through the culture. He is, instead of being countercultural, he's anti-cultural, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he's not something that people can relate to in any real way. There are some pockets of people that he'll relate to, but those are people that are already voting for us. Those are people that are already responding to the message. So I don't think that you're going to dissuade people by changing the ad campaign in a broader sense, because you can still have Rick Santorum go and talk to people down in wherever. That's not a huge problem. You can still have Rick Santorum be a part of the party and talk about these things. Just, you know, for the love of getting the Senate, could you please make sure that he's not the guy doing the main messaging on this?
Right, right. And it is a matter of changing our ad campaign, but there is a lot of legitimate fear out there amongst our own people who because they've seen so often, and because it is very true that a lot of people, a lot of the guys who are our current senators would much rather just change the product because that's easier than trying to figure out what's the best ad campaign. It is much easier to make friends with the media and all the people in Washington, D.C. if you just say, yeah, I think amnesty and a guest worker program is a really good idea. I love that XM Bank. That thing's awesome. We really need that. And the Chamber of Commerce is the best thing since sliced bread. And the Tea Party is a bunch of crazies, but I sometimes have to suck up to them because I need their votes. But I really think they're crazy. It's an awful lot easier as a politician to do that than to stick to your conservative principles and find a better way to advertise them, because that, what we're doing for a couple of hours every week is trying to figure out what is a good advertising message. I mean, this actually is kind of an advertising meeting that we have going on every week, and it's hard because we have to understand who our customer is and what our product is, and how to fit the product and the customer together in a way that will appeal to new customers, will satisfy our existing customers, bring in the money people and all of the disparate groups. It's not easy, and I can understand why we have so many politicians that just say, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to be a moderate, because a moderate is liked.
Yes.
A moderate is popular, and I want to be popular.
And when we talk about the marketing, I've been looking at it from the speech teacher perspective, where what you say is not as important as what someone else hears, and that is essential in communication. That's essential in broadcasting. It's everyone gets that concept that's had that training, but I think it's much more, I guess, understandable and easy to communicate to put it in the advertising world. And I think that I'm going to start thinking differently about how to say that, because again, if it's more accessible as a message, that's where I want to go. I can talk about my experiences and teach and speech and drama and whatever, but it's not as effective to people who don't have to go out there and make themselves understood on a regular basis, in any way. They're just more concerned about, I want to say what I want to say. Well, corporate America doesn't have that luxury. They really don't. And so if we keep, pushing it back toward the advertising angle rather than just messaging and speech and whatever, if we talk about it as an ad campaign and the product that we're selling or the values that we've all agreed are very important, then that's probably a lot better way to phrase it going forward. And I'm really glad I got that revelation just now.
Oh my God, we just figured out how to advertise the advertising. Oh my God, this is so meta.
Isn't it though?
It's just meta. And I wonder if, we get so much pushback from people about changing our messaging because they are, like you say, I just want to say what I feel and what I truly believe. These are my core values. And people do get uptight about changing the advertising campaign on your political beliefs. They would get the same uptight about their really deeply held religious beliefs, whereas they don't get that uptight about changing the advertising on Bluebell ice cream, because you know what, that's just ice cream. It's not a part of my soul. And my political beliefs are a part of my soul. Ice cream was a bad choice because ice cream actually kind of is, but you know what I mean. The political concepts and religious things, that's who you are. It's what you believe, and you're going to change. You want me to change the way I talk about who I am and what I believe? That's very threatening. You want to change how you talk about the beverage I drink? Okay, that's fine. Whatever. You want to change the packaging that my coffee comes in? Whatever.
And the stakes are higher with what we're doing than what corporate America is doing.
Yeah.
They really are. So we ought to be more receptive to that because it works for corporate America than less receptive because it's as somebody was criticizing me for, that we talked about last week, deceptive. It's not deceptive to find a better way to say what you want to say. It's not. It is simply trying to be more effective.
Yeah. It's too bad that that Andy and Corey had to leave, because we've been talking about ad campaigns and talking about that sort of thing. And what is McDonald's? What is their catch line? Have it your way? Or is that
No,
Burger King?
that's
I can't
I'm
remember.
loving it.
I'm
Burger
sorry,
King is
Burger
have it
King
your
is have
way.
it your way. There's a lot of and when Leslie mentioned freestyle for Coke, there's a lot of really interesting freedom and choice related messaging from these major advertisers. So
Because that's what the kids want.
freedom and choice, yes,
Yeah.
and that's what
It's
we're
their
trying
world.
to.
They want the world to revolve around them and be customized to them.
And that's what we're trying to sell. We are trying legitimately to sell that idea, and these guys are capable of doing it, and they're using it to sell their own products. So, there's got to be something there that we're not seeing, or that we just aren't capitalizing on. And maybe it is just that we have some really poor messengers at bat when it comes to like Chris Christie or Rick Santorum or Mitch McConnell or whatever, and hopefully we'll get some better messengers. Maybe Ted Cruz will figure out the right balance and tone some stuff down, and maybe figure out how to talk to people that aren't rip snorting red blooded conservatives,
Right.
and get them to like him. I don't want to fawn over Rand Paul for another 20 minutes, but he does a pretty good job at that. He does a pretty good job at getting the message out in a way that's not overly red meat Republican. This is what we have to do, and the liberals are all idiots, bad guys, and scoundrels, sort of thing.
I think there's a lot of Pauline Kael in all of us when we say, nobody I know votes liberal, nobody I know voted for Obama. It's
Right.
just that
Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself. I'm in New Jersey.
But you are not the person that we're having to deal with in terms of correcting their messaging either. What we're talking about is, Leslie and I come from deep red pockets of Texas, and the question is not, are you conservative? The question is, do you blow the top off the conservative meter? That's sort of what we're stuck in, and that's great for the pockets in which we live. And I challenge anybody to think through all the people that they know in their life and discover, are you really in a homogenous community? Are you in a place, are you in your social media neighborhoods and your real life neighborhoods? Are you only talking to people that are just like you? If so, it's going to be harder for you to understand the need to change the advertising, because what's worked for you in the past for all those years has worked for you, because those are the people that you talk to and they all already agree. That's not going to bring any new people into the conservative movement. It just isn't. People don't even think about conservatism or liberalism or progressivism as a rule unless they're very engaged. They know people by what they do and who they are and how they talk, not by who they voted for. But those of us who are highly engaged, we tend to think of it that way, and we put people into those boxes. Unfortunately, a good portion of this country doesn't think that way. And so if we are in a bubble, if we identify that we are in a bubble, and everybody sort of looks, thinks, acts, and votes like us as far as what we have and what we do, we need to start really examining that and figuring out how we are going to ever bring anybody new in if everybody that we know is already just like us, already believes the same things, already has the same values. And then one final point on that. Hollywood, and I've said this today in response to Chris's piece as well, Hollywood isn't making movies glorifying faithlessness or disloyalty or, they're not glorifying people engaged in cheating and lying, not for the most part. There might be one or two here and there that are sort of anti-heroes, but Hollywood is still making conservative themed movies. Television is still conservative themed shows in a lot of ways, and just learning how to identify those things in the culture and point to them opens up conversations with people who don't talk politics at all. When you can say, those are conservative things, this is a conservative nation, those are conservative values, based on evidence in the culture. You can make that case. But in our bubbles, we've sort of isolated ourselves to where we don't want to talk about culture because it's dirty, dirty culture, and it's all mindless and stupid. It's not. We're still getting great conservative content out there. We're just not identifying it as such and showing it to people as such.
Right. And isn't it, and appreciating and publicizing the irony that people who proclaim themselves to be rabidly liberal are making content that is conservative in theme, and they're living lives that are conservative because they're living a life that is based on pure D capitalism, meritocracy. You succeed or fail every day, and you audition every single time. And their stories do, even a show, even a TV program named Mistresses that people will assume is all about bad, cheating, dirty sex people, and it's not. It's not. It's actually far more moral than you would expect because the people who actually do cheat on their spouses suffer for it. And the heroes are the ones who are faithful. So yes, it's summertime TV with pretty people and they have dirty sex, but it's moral, and it's a moral show, and you can watch it without having your moral values abused because the people who write the show understand if I call it Mistresses and have advertising with Alyssa Milano in a low-cut blouse, people will watch. But people will stay tuned in if the woman who cheats on her husband gets in trouble for it and feels really bad for it and suffers for it. And we have to show that the faithful people are the successful ones because that's what's going to keep them tuned in, and that's what's going to sell my advertising. That's because America is still a fairly conservative group of people. And we need to understand that if you shut yourself off from all of TV and culture because they're all dirty liberals, you're narrowing your focus. You're not going to expand out into the community. You're not going to make any new friends, and you're not going to have the opportunity to talk about these things because you're the one who says, no, I don't watch TV. I don't have a TV. I gave up on all TV. All I ever do is read books that I check out from the library because all of culture is bad. Well, you know what? You're not somebody fun that I want to talk to, so go away. Because I don't read books. Because reading is complicated and hard.
Yes, it takes a long time, that whole reading.
That whole reading thing is so slow.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Give me pictures and talky talk. That's about it. That's all I do is pictures and talky talk.
To that said, I just put a link in the chat to a video that's worth anyone's time. It is, if you look it up online, Bubble Creek Canyon on YouTube, you can find it. It is one of the best illustrations of absenting yourself from the culture to no good purpose in the end. It is a great and hysterical little parody of some communities. In this particular case, it's a Christian community, but that we get into, sort of and this is why we call it bubbles. It's that isolatedness because we are cut off from everything. It's all, one section of it is all your favorite movies, runtime 13 minutes. Because
Yeah.
they've cut out
All
all
those
the offensive stuff. And we cannot turn ourselves completely out of public life and culture simply because that's what's comfortable to us. It's a defensive posture. It doesn't win. And it doesn't even hold ground in this culture, because as soon as your children are old enough, they're going to be taking and partaking of all that forbidden culture, no matter what it is.
Right. If you walk off the
So,
battlefield, you lose.
yes, there's no way to
Guaranteed.
win.
Guaranteed. You cannot win if you don't stay on the battlefield. And however, it is human nature. We are tribal people, and you do gravitate towards people who are like you. So you know, it's not a bad thing to live in a bubble. I am going to be, you know, I'm going to gather around me people who are like me, that I have something in common with, that I feel safe and comfortable with, and that I have shared interests with. That's just natural. I mean, that's tribalism.
Right.
It doesn't help us win so many elections if that's all we do, and we don't recognize that in ourselves.
Right.
So I don't know.
Well, like, just, but you don't isolate yourself. Those aren't the only people that you hang around with. That's, you know, it's highly difficult these days, I think, at least, to maintain that kind of perfect bubble where it's only people who agree with you all the time, and you know, have your same exact perspective on everything all the time. But people try and do that, and people call other people out for not agreeing with them 100% of the time, and that's troubling. But you know, I have you know, friends on both sides of a lot of issues. I have friends that are Democrats. In fact, one that was very, very helpful in talking about that urinal issue, the Obama had urinal cake thing, and he was extremely helpful in making a very good point about what is effective messaging and what is not,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, not hammering anyone for being conservative or anything, just talking sheerly about the messaging of it. You know, it's important to have people that are that have more than your opinion around you, and to get their take on things, because if you're only surrounded by people like yourself, there's no ground to be gained, and you can't help them and they can't help you.
Yeah.
And you're not
It's the same thing.
growing. This is one of the reasons I love Google Plus. It's my universe on Google Plus. My social media universe is so much more diverse than Facebook. It's just a less neighborhood type thing, and more a you know, maybe a train station in which you meet a bunch of people and end up having to wait and talk with them. It is a broadening thing for me. I can test what I say against people that don't agree with me at all, and see how that my arguments stack up. The great thing about the guy you were talking about, the Democrat friend that you have, he friended me as well, and we've gotten into very many conversations over issues that we agree far more than we disagree. And what that's going to do is not convert him to being a Republican, but it's going to take some of the image of Republicans all having fangs and sharp claws and awful, you know, careless and uncaring characteristics, and it's going to put instead the face of someone who's reasonable from his perspective, who can be, you know, just you can discuss things with, who you can debate politely with and not be, you know, called names. He's going to take that impression away. The next time somebody says all Republicans are blank, he's not going to let that go unchallenged. And I appreciate that.
I've been called fewer names by him than I have by some other conservative people that I know.
That's because you're a freaking rhino. I'm just saying.
I'm from New Jersey. What do you expect? What do you want from me? What do you want from me?
You're probably more conservative than me. I can't really talk.
That's true. I probably am. But that's the thing is it's important to get outside of your comfort zone on all of these issues and get feedback, because if you don't get feedback, then how are you going to know, how are you going to be able to market anything if you don't know what other people are saying about these issues? If you don't know what everybody else is saying, then how are you going to, then I guess you are going to just, how are you going to know that you shouldn't be content with put them back on the truck and send them back over the line because they're all dirty, filthy, brown people? How do you know? How do you know that's not the right message if everybody around you is saying that same exact thing? And it's crazy to me that people aren't trying to hear other sides of conversations for just the purpose of knowing what other people have to say. It's crazy to me not wanting to know more about what other people have to say, so that you might, if you are right, help them out and get them on the right track, or if they're wrong, know what wrong people are saying.
Well, there are a lot of people that are not
I totally
not
screwed that thing
necessarily.
up. I lost where I was. I lost where I was on that one. But suffice it to say, if they're doing the good thing, follow the good thing. If they're doing the bad thing, disagree with it. That's what I was trying to say. I think I said the same thing twice.
I think there are a lot of people that are not necessarily on a mission and don't really care about growing the conservative movement or helping anyone else learn. Or I think they're just they want to express their thoughts and move on, or read the news and move on. And that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of sad to me, but I get it. And those are the people that we look at, or that I look at and say, okay, well, that's cool. I am here to inform you. I'm happy to provide you with news and information and maybe a different perspective on things, and I won't see you as a fighter alongside with me, because you just kind of aren't. I don't know.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But guys, we are 2.5 hours into this. This is a really long show. I think we should probably wrap it up, don't you?
Yes, absolutely.
It's been great. It's been a good conversation. We've talked about everything from urinal cakes to ice cream. So
and diarrhea. You forgot the diarrhea.
Exactly. And what?
Yes. That's good. I totally did that unintentionally, but cake and ice cream, just the wrong kind of cake.
That's just, yeah. That's good thing I'm not hungry.
I am. That's what's bad is I am. Except
so you have some dinner now. Urinal cakes. Also, just to really destroy your dinner, this show, I believe, was the first use of the word diarrhea.
Third time now.
So, just to put those words in your mind. Oh, and also, I drank a styrofoam Diet Coke. So
I can tie diarrhea, fourth time, back to the mission. Watch me go. This is how good I am.
No, we would rather not.
I'm now fascinated. I am now fascinated.
Because the people who are resistant to exploring new ways to change their message simply have the diarrhea of the mouth syndrome, where they just spit out whatever is in there.
Ooh, good.
These are visuals and things. We don't need this. We should have, just, it's got to be a hard cut. We're out. The show's done. We're done with it.
No, that was too good. That was excellent.
Oh boy.
We're still live?
Yes, we're still live.
We're still live. Of course we are, because why the hell not?
Exactly.
Okay. Because the people out there in Chatland, they're probably either drunk off their butts laughing at us, or train wrecks are fun to watch. Anyway, so 2.5 hours. I'm gonna stop the
Refinery number
broadcast.
2. Hold on. We need to
Wait, what?
actually say the name of the show and stuff and then, yeah,
Like advertising, like professionalism and stuff.
well, I screwed that up going in, but
Are you sure you want the name on it after all that?
yes,
This is
we do.
diarrhea episode.
Times.
Oh my goodness.
I've got a little counter going off in my head. Ding, ding, ding.
This has been The Refinery, brought to you by the Free Radical Network, the Party of
Coca-Cola,
Choice,
brought to you by Coca-Cola.
and the Conservative Union. If you enjoyed this episode, you can watch more on the playlist on the Conservative Union YouTube page, and you can see us Tuesday nights at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central Time.
If you dare.
If you dare, and hang out in the chat, and we appreciate everybody who's hanging out in the chat, and hopefully it'll be a little bit less bathroom humor towards the end of the show.
It's not a requirement.
Exactly.
And maybe it'll be less than 2.5 hours long next time.
Less than 2.5 hours long, yes, maybe.
But no real guarantees. Who knows?
Right.
Thanks, everybody. Next week. Bye.
Bye.